Good morning, Salon Republic. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Stephanie Kashmir, and I'm the regional educator for Loreal Professional here in Los Angeles, California, and Orange County. Today, I am going to be teaching you a little bit about working with hair that has formation. Something we've done recently within L'Oreal Professional is really honed in on the education when it comes to talking about formation of hair. When we talk about formation, that actually is such a huge conversation that should take place in every single consultation we do, because that's really how we're going to decide the appropriate products for the appropriate lightening service. So here I have a curly haired mannequin with a formation, and I would say this is about a formation 6, which would be a tight S curl. Formation goes anywhere from formation 1 through 8. So with a formation 6, it's really important to keep that curl in its natural formation when we're lightening it, rather than exposing the cuticle and over lightening. We want to make sure that we can keep the hair very, very healthy. So in that case, today I'm going to be working with Blonde Studio 9, which actually has a bonder inside, and it has an oil-based developer. So what's nice about that is, due to the oil-based developer, it's really going to help to hydrate the curl at the same time of lifting 9 levels. So we're going to get maximum lift in a really quick process. The other thing is, I want to show the difference between your application. So when it comes to formation, a lot of times as a stylist, we get lost in the hair. We're not exactly sure of the results we're going to see when we're applying any type of highlight. But when it comes to balayaging, there are quite a few different ways you can get different results. And we're going to do 2 different techniques on each side of the head. One of them, the other side of the head, we're actually going to do a big paint. So that's where we would get the most dramatic lightening results, as you can see. And this is only done in a few sections, but it has a huge impact. So thank you so much for being here. Let's get started. The first step I'm going to take is utilizing Metal Detox. So Metal Detox is a pre-color treatment. You apply it right before doing any color service, and it's compatible with all color brands. The way you do it is stay 6 inches away, and let me open my bottle. About 6 inches away, and you want to lightly mist it onto the hair. What's really about Metal Detox is the active ingredient is called glycamine, and glycamine has the ability to actually move onto the hair after it's been sprayed and attach itself to the metals. And when we remove the metals, we actually get the maximum lightening from the hair. So this is going to be the pre-treatment. And again, on average, I do about 6 to 10 sprays depending, but you don't want to overuse the product. 1 bottle is enough for 30 to 35 applications, and there's over $1,000 to be made if you're upselling a Metal Detox treatment prior to every color service. So you don't want to overuse it. So all you're going to do is mist it through the hair. When we're working with formation, it's really important not to really disrupt the curl. So the one thing I really like to do when I'm working with curls is kind of just get in there and look at the hair I'm working with. Lightly separate it with my fingers or maybe a rat tail comb, whatever you're comfortable with. But you don't want to go through with a brush and really just disrupt that hair. So because we're going to do a hair painting application, I want to just make sure I'm breaking up the curls and I can easily take my sections as we get into the hair. And breaking them up, a lot of people aren't comfortable working with texture, but I'm really just going to the root of the hair and loosely kind of pulling the hair apart just to make sure that I can get in there and take a real clean section. All right, so I feel good about it. So we've got our Metal Detox in. I'm going to go ahead and mix the Blonde Studio 9. And again, I like to work with the Blonde Studio 9 when I'm doing a freehand technique in a 1-to-1 mixing ratio. So I'm going to do 1 part developer to 1 part lightener. Go ahead and protect our hands, get our gloves on. All right. And I will weigh it out for people who use scales. I'll let you know what exactly I am doing here. Okay, so I have got about 40 grams of my lightener. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Blonde Studio Oil Developer. This is a 30 volume, and this is the only one that we use with the Blonde Studio 9, again, because it's oil-based amount, and we will be working with a 1-to-1 mixing ratio, like I mentioned. Perfect. The one thing that's really nice about Blonde Studio 9 being oil-based is it really, really provides you with an extremely creamy texture. So it's really easy to work with, really easy to mix, and you can see it is a blue lightener. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my plastic whisk and get this mixed to the consistency I like. And you can see it's a little bit more like, I would say, a Greek yogurt. It's not too runny. And because I'm going to be hair painting, I'm going to be utilizing cotton. So this is only going to be to protect the hair and create a little bit of elevation. That way it's not laying on the section I've painted. So that looks good. I like that consistency again. It looks just like this. Blonde Studio 9. The next thing I'm going to do, I think setup is really, really important. So I'm going to be painting off of my planchette. One thing when it comes to balayage, I really think the cleaner you can be in the beginning, the cleaner your work is going to be at the end. So I always make sure I have the appropriate tools. So I'm going to paint off of my planchette. I'm also going to keep my lightener with my specific brush. So this is what I'm going to call my well brush, and this is the only brush to load up my planchette. The reason for that is we want to make sure we have really clean brushes when we're painting the hair, especially when you're working with formation, because you don't want to have lightener all over the place. So this is the brush I'll be using, and I'll always load it up off to the side. That way I have a little bit of working room if I wanted to pull through some sections and completely saturate off to the side of my planchette. I also like to have two different brushes. So this one is a little bit softer. This one is a little bit firmer, but I like to have two on hand at all times so that I can get a really clean application. So I'm going to start with the L'Oreal Professional Small Balayage Brush. The other thing too is with the cotton, I like to pre-pull it. And I think a lot of times people use a lot of cotton and it's unnecessary. So again, this is only for separation. You can pull it in like 1 to 2 inch pieces. And the other thing that's really handy is if you are working with cotton, these two fingers, your pinky and your ring finger, never really do anything. So it's a great place to hold the cotton while you're working. You can hold the planchette and the cotton and just pull from the pinky as needed. So that's just another little pro tip that really helps out with your setup. So the first thing we're going to do, like I mentioned, is we'll start on the left side of the head. And this is where we're going to do more of a traditional balayage. So this will be done with a double point, which is going to give us more of a rooted effect, lighter ends, and it's a little bit more of a natural grow out. The opposite side will do a big paint so we get a bolder impact. So the first section I'm going to take, actually, I'll change this a little bit, is going to be a diagonal forward. And with that, I'm just doing a loose diagonal forward, separating the curls and clipping up the hair. Better view. Okay. So now that I have my diagonal forward section, I'm going to kind of just check into the hair. Now, this is totally up to you if you want to check into it. And when I say check, I'm making a loose check mark and just grabbing that section, because when you do that, it provides padding below so you can paint the clean surface here. So if you want to check into it, it'll leave a little bit more negative space. If you feel comfortable holding the whole section in your hand, you can absolutely do that too. So it depends on what you're looking for when it comes to the results. You can do it. Smooth out the formation. I'm not going to really put too much tension on it, but I'm going to make sure that I have a smooth surface to paint. And then I'm going to go ahead and start with my double point application. So I'm going to start an inch down, working the product back up towards the hairline for a smooth diffusal. And before completely sliding down into zone 3, which would be the ends, I'm going to complete the root area and the mid-lengths and make sure that I have a proper application and everything looks good before sliding down. So that would be my double point. Now we'll go in here and connect them. By doing a double point again, this is going to give you a little bit more of a rooted effect, a lot more negative space, and it's not going to be as bold as an impact. And the thing with curls is a lot of times when we're working with hair formation, you lose the lightening that you're actually doing because you either don't apply enough or you apply too much and you don't know what the results are going to look like. So this is a great way to kind of stay on point with the application and know every single time you're working with any formation, the results you're going to end up with. So here we went with the diagonal forward. I'm going to go ahead and just do another section, but here I'm going to go now diagonal back. So I'm trying to really just cover a lot of the headspace in a few sections, and I'm kind of just letting the hair speak to me. So curl definitely has a mind of its own, and you want to work with the hair in its natural fall because it's always going to kind of do its own thing. So if we're looking for beautiful natural results, we want to work with the natural curl pattern. Going back in here, and this is where you could apply the cotton if you felt you needed the padding, but sometimes with hair that has formation, it's already sitting off the head. So it's up to you. When I'm doing the double point, it's not as necessary. On the opposite side, when we do the big paint, I'll definitely be using the cotton. So we're going to leave that out here. A lot of times it'll fall closer to the face anyway. And I'm going to go ahead and take this full section here. A lot of times with balayage, most men or women prefer to have the lighter pieces around their face. So here I'm going to actually do a 3D balayage where I paint the surface here closest to the face, and then I change my body position and I'm actually going to paint the actual smooth surface as well. So again, this is an easy way to take one section, but really you're creating multiple lightening points. So here I'm going in and just painting this around the hairline. That way she does have that brightness. I'm not going to take it all the way into zone 3 because now I'm going to shift my body around and I'm going to do my double point again. So you can see how this kind of becomes 3D. I've painted it there, and because my body position changed, I'm actually painting it here now. Which this could be done in 2 totally different sections, but time is money, and I truly believe in working smarter, not harder, and this is a great way to get a lot of hair painting in without having to take a ton of sections, and you can get your clients in and out. So here again, I'm going to kind of just diffuse it a little bit. It's still a double point, but because it's around her face, I want a little bit higher in that section. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box as we're going. So you can see that's just our second section. Now I'm going to go ahead and we will do another diagonal forward. But again, I haven't clipped any of the hair out of the way. I'm kind of just working with what I have and how it's falling. So we'll go ahead and do another diagonal forward, because working in triangles or pie sections is always going to give you a perfect amount of padding below when you're painting the surface. So that's why I'm going for diagonal forwards or diagonal back. Here, I don't think we need to do the 3D balayage because, again, she's going to have the brightness there. So we'll go ahead and just paint the surface of this hair. And now towards the part, I'm not going to check into it to leave as much negative space. I'm kind of building the lightness as we work our way up. So here we'll go back in, smoothing out the hair. I always like to say thumb, tension, pull, especially with formation. So you want to kind of thumb the hair, smooth it out, and then apply your lightener. Starting in zone 2, working my way back up to zone 1 with a slight diffusal. And for anyone who isn't sure why I start in zone 2, the purpose for that is if you were to start with all of your lightener right here at the base, most of our clients have regrowth. So we know that's going to be natural virgin hair. It's going to lift up really easy and give us the maximum lightness because it has no color history. So when we're doing balayage, we want to make sure we don't put too much product right at the root because it's really hard to diffuse that at that point. So I'm going to go ahead now and just connect those points again. That's why when you go into zone 2 and work it back up to zone 1, you end up with a little less product on the actual hair. So that again would be a double point here. And that's only 3 sections, and we've almost worked our way up. And again, we have the end result with the mannequin here. I'll show you towards the end, and you can see just how quick and effective this technique is without having to overwork or overthink the sections that you're taking. So here again, I'm going to just show you the mannequin because I'm just working with the formation. So this is kind of how that pie section is looking. I'm just going into it, and wherever I feel the hair is naturally falling, I'm kind of just working with that. So it's not too planned out. I'm again just working with the natural fall. So here, this looks like a great section. I'm going to continue with the double point all the way up. Thumb tension pull, starting in zone 2. The other thing that's really nice about Blonde Studio 9, aside from having the oil developer, is it actually has a bonder built into the lightener. So for any stylist who's working with bonders, or if you're using a separate additive that you add in, with L'Oreal Professional's Blonde Studio 9, we recommend you charge $25 more per service, but you also let them know that all of your action built into the lightener, which is really great. So now we did that double section, double point. I'm going to go ahead, and I think in the front of the head, we'll probably do maybe 2 more sections of the head off one side. So that would mean we'll probably be doing 12 sections overall with the double point, which is going to give us really great results without being too time consuming. And again, this is why you want to kind of section out the hair. So anytime the hair is sticking together, you don't want to really disrupt that curl and break it. So you want to kind of just separate it, and wherever it separates to, that's fine. But we don't want to put too much tension on the formation. So here I'm going to take this section, and this is where we'll do another 3D balayage because again, it's coming around her face. It'd be balanced out since we have that one there. So we'll go ahead and paint here as well. So I'm going to smooth it out. And anytime you have the baby hairs, you want to go ahead, whether it's curly hair or straight hair, if there's baby hairs around the face, kind of just push them out of the way, because if you include those in the lightener, it actually ends up looking like breakage as it starts to grow out. So if we just push them out of the way, it looks really beautiful and natural still, and they won't have that hard line of demarcation. So I'm going to start here. And then again, you've got to shift your body. So to create that surface to paint again, I now need to stand directly in front of it. And because Blonde Studio 9 works with its specific developer, it actually has what we call Olicare complex. So because it's oil-based, it's really helping to hydrate the curl at the same time of giving us maximum lift. So that's one of the reasons it is my favorite lightener, being a blonde specialist, because we want blonde and we want it fast. So getting 9 levels of lift with protection is a really awesome thing for me and very, very effective when it comes to timing. So here I think this will probably be our final section off to the part. So you can see this is only 6 sections, so easy, so fast, and we're going to get a ton of lift out of it. Because we're working off of a middle part, I'm going to do the same thing again because everybody kind of wants that money piece. So you can do one of 2 things. If you wanted to actually completely saturate this piece for more brightness around the face, you definitely can do that. But because this is going to be a little bit softer, I'm not going to completely saturate it. I'm just going to continue with the 3D balayage again. So when she pulls her hair back, it's balanced and she has a lot of lightening happening. And in order to do that again, you want to stand behind. That way you're able to get that smooth surface and then shift your body again. And make sure that your clients work with you. So if you're having to stand above them and you need them to sink down in their chairs, make sure you ask them to do that, because as hairdressers, we are in so many different body positions. And when it comes to balayage or hair paint, we're completely working in different ways. So make sure that you're comfortable as you're painting, because your results will definitely show. So here I'm going back in. We're going to go a little bit bolder with this because, again, it is off the part and everybody wants a little bit more brightness normally towards their face. And the cool part about a double point is you're totally in control of your application. So you can leave a ton of negative space in between if you're looking for a lot of root shadowing, or you can diffuse it all the way up almost, and you'll have just a small amount of root shadow if that's what you're looking for. So with her, because we want it to look natural and not too dramatic, this is something that would be really easy to point entirely. Okay, so here we have those 6 sections. You can see it looks like stripy, possibly. A lot of people will say, wow, I don't know how that's going to turn out when they see the product. The beautiful part about it is balayage or hair painting is sun-kissed, so you get a very natural result. So again, we did the front section in 6 sections. We're going to move on to the back again with our double point. But the end result, I want to bring in a little bit closer so you can see, is going to be a lot softer. So you can see we're maintaining her natural level, but she has a lot of lightness all around. So it looks very, very natural. The opposite side you can see is a lot bolder, and that's where we'll get into the big paint. So with formation, if you're looking for natural, I would recommend working in points. If you're looking for a more dramatic result, then that's where we'll do the big paint application. So now we will work on the back of the head, and I'm going to kind of do the same thing. So I'm going to split it down the middle. And I just want to show you 2 different techniques on the one head. That's why we're doing half of the head, because I think a lot of times if you're not comfortable with formation, you do get lost in it and you're not sure how to take your sections or what the end goal is going to be. And then again, it's really important if the client wears their hair curly in the natural formation or if they switch it back to straight. So that's really important with the application as well, because we want it to look nice both ways. And I would recommend, if that is the case, working with the double points or triple points or single points is going to give you the most natural effect, straight or curly. So that's a great way to apply it if they go both ways. So now on the back of the head, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to take a horizontal section. So I'm going to start kind of low because, again, we're taking bigger sections. We're not overworking the technique. This should be done in less than 12 sections, which means that the whole head can be done in 24 sections, which is a full head balayage. You should definitely be charging for, but it doesn't have to take a ton of time. Reload my panchet. All right. And again, I always like to keep a flatter clip as well as my duckbill clip. So anytime I am working with formation, if I'm starting at the nape, I typically will kind of push the hair up and just kind of clip it there. That way I can get a really clean line when it comes to the actual section I'm painting. So this will be the one we're going to start with. And again, we're going to just go in and continue with the double points. Starting in zone 2, working my way back up to zone 1 with a slight diffusal. Anytime I'm actually painting a head also, I like I mentioned in the front, I like to kind of think about building that lightening impact towards the top of the head. So I normally will leave more negative space towards the nape and increase my diffusion with the lightener as we get closer to the top of the head. So it looks a little bit more like the sun actually did it. So you'll notice here, I'm not going to diffuse that much. We'll keep that negative space. Then we'll go back in. And here I'm going to do, since that was horizontal, just to create another pie section, now I'm going to go diagonal back. Excuse me. All right. So you can see again, that just became kind of a pie section, perfectly planned out to give me, excuse me, the section that I'm looking to work with. Going back in with my double point. Excuse me, my allergies are terrible today. Okay, so here you can see again, double point, but I've actually added a little bit more lightener because again, we're working our way back up. So I'm gonna make sure that I'm building those results as we work our way up the head. Now that I've created that diagonal back again, now I'm gonna go kind of horizontal because it's gonna perfectly create that pie section for me again. So just loosely separating those curls. And you can see how easy, even with a formation 6, it is just to kind of separate the curls and work with them. I think a lot of times we think it's a lot of hair because it's not laying flat like smooth hair. And that's why we end up adding way too many pieces and it takes a long time for the actual application. So again, time is money. Let's work smarter, not harder, and really get effective results in little time. So here we'll continue with the double point. I'm not utilizing the cotton yet. Because it's oil-based as well, it's going to really help to hydrate the curls at the same time of giving 9 levels of lift. So that's the other thing that's really great for naturally dark bases. I would say anybody who's a level 5 or darker, or anyone who wants maximum lifting or has formation to their hair, Blonde Studio 9 is great for that due to the oil base once again. So there's our double point, just dropping it down. We've got 3 sections in the back, so this is a total of 9 sections so far. Because that was horizontal, you can see I'm going to do the same thing again, and I'm going to go diagonal back. And it's a little different since we're working with half the head, but I'm going from horizontals to diagonal backs because, again, it's creating that section every single time for me. It's also really easy for you to go back and retouch your work. So if the client loved what you did this time, they don't want to get any lighter next time, it's really easy for you to see exactly how you applied to go back and retouch that. Thumb tension pull. The other thing too is when I'm picking up my product off my planchette, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm always working in one direction. So I'm almost clean sweeping it to the left, always allowing this part to stay open in case I want to pull through some pieces and saturate. The other thing also is I pick up the same amount of product I'm going to lay down. So if I'm doing a really fine line, I'll grab a finer amount of product. If I'm doing a real thick line, then I'm going to grab more. That way I don't have to go back to my planchette too often. And it's just these little things that make it really easy. I know not everybody holds a planchette in their hand, but if you can get used to holding it, it really, really makes the job a lot faster and your work a lot cleaner because you're not using the same brush and the board that you have to pick up, and just everything is really nicely laid out for you. So here we have that double section. You can see the negative spaces there. Again, this is only a few sections. It's going to give us a beautiful, natural lightening result in very little time. And we're protecting the actual curl pattern because nobody with curly hair wants to jeopardize their natural formation for lightening. And when they do, they normally regret it. So choosing the perfect product for curls is everything. So here I'm going back into my horizontal. Again, I'm going to bring it closer to the camera because I know sometimes even in live classes, people don't see how the sectioning is happening. So you can see from me going from a diagonal forward or diagonal back to horizontal, it's always creating that little pie section. And why that's important is because I have the padding here so that I'm able to paint the surface of the hair. So it's really important to make sure that you are working in really clean sections. But if you're working in triangles or pies, you'll always have that there for you. And we're not doing any kind of 3D painting in the back because, again, you're not going to see any of it. So there's no point to paint the sides. You could if you wanted to. If you wanted it to be a lot brighter on the face, we could paint that surface. But again, this is going to be a little bit more natural. So we'll continue with the double points. And please feel free to put your questions in the chat box if there's anything you're questioning, or if you would like a better explanation of the product I'm using or the technique. I would love to answer your questions. So again, slight diffusal. The other thing too, I don't think I even pointed out, but if you notice my application, I'm always working in a downward motion. So you want to make sure, especially when you're working with curly hair, because it can get messy easy because of the formation, that you're working in a downward sweep. So we want to make sure we're applying it downward versus going up and creating that friction within the hair. You'll get a lot cleaner result. All right, so we've got that double point there. This is 5 sections. So we could take this as 1, but I think just to balance it out, I'm actually going to break it up into 2. So here, this would be 12 sections. We're going to actually make it 13 throughout. So I'm going to go from this one into again, diagonal forward, which will leave me just 1 section I'll paint off of the actual part 1. Okay, so now I'll go in here, again, working with the double point. And when you're surface painting, you don't want to be afraid of the lightener because you need to remember we're only painting the surface. So even if it looks like it's going to be stripy, it's not, because it's not complete saturation. So you want to make sure you have enough product to cover the surface, but just know that your results are going to be sun-kissed even with 9 levels of lift. Also, I'm working with a mannequin, but this happens with clients as well. Anytime you have any extra hair, just get it off your brush, because otherwise it streams lightener throughout, and we just want to make sure we're working really clean. Okay, and then this would be my final section. The reason I took that separate, you can see, is because it's kind of falling right there in the negative space. So for the most balance, I wanted to make sure that I just had a single point falling right in between that. So here I'm going to just do a single point to finish out this section. And a single point can be really fine, it can be really thick, but really it's just going to be 1 line versus the double point or the V application I've been doing the whole time. So I'm going to just go in here right in the middle of that section, diffuse it right up to the root, and then work it down. Okay. So here you can see that was 13 sections off to the one side. And we've completely covered that head. So even though it was 13 sections in a double point, this would still be a full balayage if you were to duplicate that on the other side for more of a natural result. So something like that is going to, again, end up a little bit more like this. So this was done the same exact way. And you can see how she has the brightness throughout, but she's maintained her natural root the whole time. So that's going to give a really easy grow out because there's not too much of a hard line because we maintained the natural hair with the double point application. Off to the other side, this is where we'll do the big paint. And you can see that this is more of an overall lightening service. She doesn't have as much of a root shadow because we did a big paint throughout, which means we painted the entire surface. Before we start that, I just want to show you how fast this is actually happening. So with Blonde Studio 9, you'll see about 3 levels of lift in the first 10 minutes. So you can definitely see your results are happening very fast. And if you leave it for the maximum time, which is 50 minutes, you should see 9 levels of lift, which is really awesome. So now we're going to go ahead and switch over to this side. And this is where, again, we'll do more of a big paint. So here, I'm going to stick kind of with the same sectioning because it works. Tighten her head. It works, it's effective, and again, we were able to cover a lot of headspace in very little time. So same situation, make sure the curls are separated. We already have our metal detox in the hair. So we're making sure to look out for the integrity of it. And here, since we're gonna do the big paint, I'm going to do, we'll do a diagonal forward on this. That way we can get a little bit more brightness. So we'll start with a diagonal forward, which means just like that. Come a little closer. All right. I'm gonna load up my planchette one more time. And you can see this lightener is really, really nice. It's super creamy. Really easy to work with, but I haven't used any perforated wrap or cotton or anything for separation because mixing in a 1-to-1 mixing ratio gives me the perfect consistency to paint the hair without too much swelling. You can see even in my bowl, it's really not swelling much. So it's a really nice lightener to work with because you don't have to worry about it. The one thing I would say though is if you're gonna do a ton of sections and you're working with Blonde Studio 9, mix it in smaller batches. So if you're gonna maybe start in the back, maybe you mix it with a 20 volume and then remix with the 30 for the front or whatever the case is to make sure that the product is active. Because again, 50 minutes is the maximum time. After that, you won't see any more lift. And we don't recommend using any heat at all. So here I will be using the cotton. Normally the first section, it tends to fall out because of the ears. So sometimes it's a little harder to paint there. So that's why I won't be doing a 3D, but I did the diagonal forward. That way we have very little hair around the hairline and I can start the surface painting here. So same situation, thumb tension pull. And now we're gonna do a big paint. So this is gonna be for a bolder impact. So rather than doing my single and double points, I'm going to go ahead and still start in zone 2, slightly diffusing the product back into zone 1. And when I say diffusal, I mean I'm kind of just going back up with the product remaining on my brush and just creating a little bit of softness there. So I'm just basically brushing it over the root area, but making sure that zone 2 and zone 3 has complete surface painting so that we can get that bright effect. And that's what's going to give you, again, a soft grow out, but a really bold impact. So this would be a big paint versus the double point. And you can see here, slight diffusal, and it's a lot more surface painted here so that I can get that brightness. So from our diagonal forward, I will go ahead and take another horizontal. We're not going to drop the cotton there because again, it'll fall. So here we'll go straight across, horizontal, and just drop that section down. And because we're looking for a bolder impact, a lot more brightness, I'm not going to check into any of the hair. So we're going to leave less negative space and cover the complete surface of all of the hair. I will, again, do the 3D balayage here so she has more brightness. So we'll start it here. And then slide around again and paint the surface. And here I'll still do the full surface. So even when I'm painting the full section, I'm always starting in zone 2 and working it back up into zone 1. And I'm doing all of that before even sliding down into zone 3. So again, you want to make sure you like what's going on here before you slide down because it's a lot harder to regain your tension, especially with hair that has formation, if you're not keeping the tension through the whole application. So make sure you start in zone 2, work your way back up to zone 1, and then slide down to zone 3. All right, 2 sections there. I don't see this being more than 6 sections either. Super, super easy to follow. I'm going to go diagonal back now. So again, I'm just kind of working with the hair, the face shape, the hairline. I'm kind of looking at how I can cover the most amount of space in the smallest amount of time And again, getting the boldest impact right now for this formation. And because it's just surface painting, it's actually giving the overall appearance of a lot more lightening because we're completely painting that full surface here. So here we could go back in again if you wanted a little brighter by her face. We'll continue with the 3D. And then slide over and paint the surface here. And you can see just how creamy this product is. It doesn't take a lot of working on my end. I'm not really having to work too hard to actually apply it evenly. It adheres to the hair and it actually helps to improve the cosmicity of the hair. So because it's oil-based, you're not just lightening the hair, but you're really looking out for the integrity of the curl. And I think that's really important because a lot of times people with curly hair want to get lighter, but they don't want to risk losing their natural formation. So choosing the appropriate product is really, really important. So here we've done that. This is where we could drop the cotton if we wanted to. It would sit pretty nice. Also, I would recommend laying vertically versus horizontally because of the fact if you were going to check into your section, you don't want to pull out the cotton from the underside. So by laying it like that, it makes it a lot easier so that you don't disrupt the section you've just painted. Okay, so here, that was our diagonal back. We will go with another horizontal. And I'll use my comb to create the section, but then I'm always just kind of breaking the hair apart with my fingers. That way I'm not disrupting that natural formation. We know curly hair can get a little excited sometimes, so we don't want to struggle through it or pull the client's hair. You want to just work with what you've got and make it beautiful. So here we go. We've got a horizontal section. This one we're not going to paint the surface of because, again, you can see it's such a small section here with the pie peeking towards the actual hairline. So we're going to go ahead and just paint the full surface. And the other thing, too, you want to make sure you apply enough product. So with hair that has formation, we want to make sure that we've applied enough product, and it actually helps to lay the hair down a little bit better also. So don't be afraid to cover that if we're looking for a bold impact. The other thing too is when I do my diffusal, if you notice, I'm not picking up any more product. So I'll kind of go back up to the root area with whatever remaining lightener I have. And that's how I'm kind of diffusing that, but making sure we have full, and I'm sorry, not saturation, full surface paint. All right. This is where you could also start to saturate it too, though. So if we want these pieces to be a little bit bolder, as I work my way up the head, this is normally where sometimes I'll pop it back onto the planchette and pull some of it through if we want brighter ends. So in that case, I'll use a little bit of my product as glue. I'll decide at what point I want it to be totally saturated. Normally it's about right where the cheek is so that we can really just enhance their features and brighten up the face. So I'm going to go ahead knowing that that's where I want it, apply it underneath the actual hair. That way I know I've got some product underneath. Pop it on to the clean side of my planchette. And then this is where I'm really going to open it up and make sure that everything is saturated at this point. But it's really only saturated from zone 2 towards the end into zone 3. So once I've put it on the planchette and really opened it, made sure that all of the hair is totally saturated, now I'm going to close up that section again. So I'm bringing it back together. You can see a minute ago I had it all over my board. While it's still on the board, I'm making sure that everything's evenly saturated. And rather than sliding it off, because that would remove product from the bottom side, I'm going to pop it off of my board. So make sure that your surface painting is good. And when you like it, we're going to go ahead and just kind of pop it off the board. The other thing I want to show you before I do that is this is kind of what we're looking for on the bottom side if you are saturating and diffusing. So you want it to look very similar to the diffusal side. You don't want it to look too chunky under there. That's where normally we're not happy with the results. So popping it off the board. Anytime you get a little extra lightener in the hair, it's nice to just kind of wipe it out. I know some stylists will get it wet, and when you get the lightener wet, it's keeping it active. So it's almost better to kind of let it dry out on its own if it's somewhere you don't want it versus getting it wet. So now we've surface painted that. Again, this is only 4 sections, I believe. Super, super easy, super fast. Go now with my diagonal back section, but again, because we are working closer to the head and we want more surface painting here, I think I'm going to switch up the actual direction we're taking it. So now, because her hair falls to the front, this is my diagonal back, but I'm going to actually paint it like that, knowing that it falls here versus taking it straight across the head, because this is her natural fall. I want to make sure that around her face she gets that brightness. Again, I went from my horizontal into a diagonal back here with that front piece. Okay, so that'll be what we paint now. And then I think I'm going to continue to just kind of work that. So this will probably be maybe 4 more sections. Reloading my planchette every time. And now going back in. Here, this should probably be a 3D again, because we want it to be balanced and we're closest to the face. Balance is so important, and I think when you work like this, it makes it really easy to duplicate what you're doing on the opposite side for consistency if that's what you were looking for. But again, we're doing 2 different techniques so you can see the different results when it comes to application. So here I 3D painted that off to the one side. Now I'm just painting the entire surface with slight diffusal at the root. Here also is normally where they might want to be a little bit brighter. So if you did want to pull it through, this is where it would be nice, because it's going to come into the piece or the so a little bit plop it, shut. Really open up that hair and work it through up into zone 2. I'm telling you, anyone not working with a planchette right now, it saves so much time and you have so much more control of your application by using a little uneven or you have too much product. I'll kind of just look at the bottom side and I'll do the same thing, a little bit of dry brushing or diffusal just to make sure we've got a beautiful result. Pop it off and drop it. All right, so since that was a diagonal back, I can do one of 2 things. And again, this is never the same. I kind of just let the client's hair speak to me. So because we did a diagonal back now, we can do one more horizontal like this, which would kind of even that out. And then it would leave us our part line to finish with. So I think I'm going to do the horizontal off of that diagonal back. And again, the reason I took that one differently was because I wanted brightness around the face, and that's where it was falling. So here we'll just take this. This is going to be just a straight horizontal. And again, you can see, because we painted that, it's just coming right off of that section. She is getting light. You can see already how much lightness is happening with our double point, and that is so awesome to see, especially on somebody with dark hair. So if you're struggling with your lightening results or with your lightener and you're looking for something new, I would highly, highly recommend the Blonde Studio 9, because aside from the fact that you're getting maximum lift, again, you're getting so much protection with the bonder built in, as well as the oil-based developer and the Olicare complex, which is the technology behind the product. Not to mention that we already did Smart Bond, which is removing, I'm sorry, not Smart Bond, our metal detox treatment, and it's removing the metals from the actual hair during the color process. That's going to allow us to get maximum lift and have a perfect canvas to deposit the tone into once the lightening service is done. So here, again, now we're off to the part. Rather than doing a double point like we did on that side, we're going to continue with the big paint. And you can see, because we're only surface painting, you still have a lot of that natural underneath, but it's going to give you the overall look of a lighter hair versus a sun-kissed looking rooted effect. So here we can just paint the whole entire surface. And I am going to leave it off of the part there since we have it there. We're just going to go really bright with the actual top. So we'll make sure that we apply enough product. I'm going to apply a little bit more right at the root versus the diffusal like normal, just to make sure that it flows into that front section. I did do the 3D balayage on. And I know a lot of times stylists sometimes get nervous when it comes to the big paint, applying it like this. Again, it's only surface painting. So I think the most important part, and I'll change my angle on the camera for you to see real quick with the doll head. The most important part is really just creating that soft diffusal at the root area. So again, knowing that we're going from so dark to so light, you almost want to kind of dry brush it or make sure that you don't have too much product on your brush. So we want all of this to be saturated. But then I go back when I have very little, and this is where I kind of just work it down, remove a little bit of the product, but make sure that it's still there and it looks really sun-kissed. So there we would leave the top just like that, complete surface paint. And now we'll go off to the back. And I'm going to show you again, because seeing is definitely believing. I don't know if you can see how light this is getting, but I can already see that she's in the blonde family. She's getting a lot lighter, so she's not as dark as she was, and this has just been halfway through my application. So that's why I recommend, because it does work so fast, mixing in different batches. If you don't work too quick, you want to make sure that maybe you mix for the back of the head and then remix for the front so your product stays active. But again, I haven't remixed anything. This is my same 1-to-1 mixing ratio. My product isn't swelling too much. I really, really love the consistency. And because I like to work a little bit faster, and this product definitely allows me to do that and get maximum lift without having to slow anything down. The other thing too is because the bonder is built in, it lifts exactly like it would with anything else. So sometimes people think it slows the lifting process down. It absolutely does not. It just provides you the protection and it lifts at the same exact time. So we'll do the same thing we did on the other one. We're going to just start with the horizontal and we'll do this full surface paint. Thumb tension pull. Working it back up. Now we'll go diagonal back. So we've got our horizontal, and now we've created another diagonal back section. Again, you can see it just maps it out super, super easy. This works for curly hair, straight hair, highlights, or balayage. It's just a super, super effective section. Again, so you can always be consistent with your work. So here, I'm going to thumb tension pull it. And again, we're just going to maintain the surface here. I don't want much more brightness off to the side. Even though we could paint it, we're going to just keep painting the surface. And if anybody who just joined has any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat box. If you have any questions about any of the things I've talked about, the Metal Detox pre-color treatment, or the Blonde Studio 9 with bonder built in. Okay, so then from there again, we will go with our horizontal. The other thing that's awesome too, especially being a sweet stylist, is not only are we providing a full head of balayage, but you've also done a treatment and included a bonder. So those are two upcharges you can do without even having to do anything different. It's just choosing the appropriate product and tacking on a little bit more money because you care about the integrity for the hair. And L'Oreal Professional makes all of that possible really, really easy, fast, and effective. So this would be, I would be charging for my metal detox treatment, which would be about a $30 add-on. And then we recommend charging $25 when you're working with the bonder inside in addition to your lightening price. So it should be $25 higher. So that alone is $55 that I'm adding on to the ticket just for doing the balayage service they booked. And at the end, I'll have better results and the hair will look better over time as well. So here we'll go with another diagonal back. And the easy thing with the metal detox is all you're doing, like I did in the beginning of the service, is just spraying it through the hair at the time of consultation. If it's at a site, it's at a mine. So I always recommend keeping it at your station. Anytime the client talks about maybe their color is a little bit too warm, or they've experienced breakage, or their tone never holds up, metal detox is the answer for that. Most complaints clients bring up, metal detox will be the answer for. So it helps to reduce 87% breakage, and it also removes the metals that are actually living inside of the hair due to the copper pipes in the street. So everybody has metals in their hair. It actually took us 7 years of testing hair samples, real colored hair samples, and we now hold 9 patents on it. So it is definitely innovative, makes a world of difference when it comes to the actual color services you're providing. So if you are not happy with the results you're getting, or you're seeing a lot of fading, I'd recommend trying the metal detox. It provides a perfect canvas after the lightening service. So here we have, again, our diagonal back. So now we are up to the top of the head. I think I'm going to do one more horizontal here. And then that'll leave us with our top section that we'll paint entirely again. And if you notice, when I'm working with formation, I use the comb to create a clean section, and then I use my fingers to separate the hair. So I'm never really combing it out or pulling the hair. I don't want to disrupt their curl. Nobody wants their hair pulled or feeling like it's tangly. So you want to kind of just work with the formation itself. As long as you can get the clean, smooth surface, there's no need to really put too much tension on it. Okay, so here we will paint the surface again. Always painting in a downward motion. When you go up and down, you're roughing up the cuticle and you tend to not have control of the hair. So if you can get into a habit of actually applying in a downward motion, you'll have really clean results every single time with very little marbleization underneath. And again, due to my application, you can see because the hair has a lot of body to it, because it has natural formation, I'm not really using the cotton to separate my sections, but none of my product is picking up from the bottom side. And that's because I've mixed a 1-to-1 mixing ratio. So your mixing ratio is super, super important, especially if you're doing an open air technique and you're not using anything to conduct heat. And again, that's why I chose Blonde Studio 9, because I knew I was going to do open air. So I want maximum lift, knowing I'm not enclosing anything. But if you felt you needed to, I would recommend using perforated wrap to separate your sections. Okay, so we'll actually take this into 2 sections just because I want to make sure she has enough brightness and it doesn't look too dark underneath. So I broke that into 2, and we'll finalize with those 2 being surface painted. And then I'm going to show you one last thing I like to do with curls. Anytime I'm doing lightening, because again, looking at this, sometimes you think that it's going to be stripy and not very balanced. So we want to go through and make sure that it looks really sun-kissed and natural, because again, hair with formation is going to normally fall naturally. It has a lot of movement. So we want to make sure that regardless of how they're wearing it, it always looks good. And I also didn't pull anything through in the back because I want this to look more balanced and make the front look a little bit bolder and brighter. That's why we just saturated those few pieces there. All right, this will be our final section. So again, I'm just going to paint off the part, but you can see it ended in a pie shape as well. So every single section I've taken has been really well planned out. That way I can work my way up to the top of the head in very little time. Okay. So now you can see that was probably maybe 13 sections as well. So the whole entire head with 2 different techniques was a total of 26 sections, which was super, super easy to do. And the results are going to be completely different on each side, obviously, due to the formation. But one thing I like to finalize with anytime I'm doing the lightning is you can continue to use your planchette, or you can use what we like to call a handchet and pick up the product from that. So sometimes at the very end, when I have excess lightener in my bowl and I want to just get a really clean result and a natural looking effect, I'll apply the product onto my planchette. And then I will come back over, especially in the sections that we did the double points. So this is a little more effective when we are leaving the root area, but we want to make sure, since we didn't do saturation, that we're getting brightness. So I'll go in with some of my product on my fingers and I'll kind of just squish it into the hair. So you can see, and I'll bring it in closer, that by having the product on my fingers and putting it into the curl, I'm getting a little bit of natural diffusion and lightness without it looking stripy. So when everything is overall done, it's going to be a brighter result, but also it's going to look a little bit more sun-kissed, and it's not going to be so perfectly plotted. So I'll go in and just kind of, not really saturating it, but looking at the sections, maybe I left some negative space in, anything that looks a little darker that I want to kind of just maybe brighten up or enhance. Even like around the face, if I didn't pull it through, but now I want this to be just a tad bit brighter towards the end, knowing everything's been sitting, I'll go back through and kind of just work it in like that. And you can see she is already lifted, I would say, about 5 levels. So she is going to be nice and blonde, but have that really smooth diffusion throughout. The other thing too is like over here in the other section, same thing. You almost just kind of scrunch it into the hair at the very end. You're almost like just kind of frosting it with a little bit more lightener just to give it that really soft result. So that is my balayage technique with Blonde Studio 9. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the box. But I hope that this was something that you can utilize behind the chair. Again, to wrap it back around, we did the metal detox pre-treatment first. This is going to reduce 87% breakage, give us really, really beautiful lightening results. That way we can go back in once the color is lifted and ready and do a gloss with DLA. So every single lightening service we do with L'Oreal Professional, we always like to finalize with DLA, which is our gloss or toner. And what's awesome about DLA is it actually is acidic, so it helps to seal the cuticle entirely. So it'll lock in the tone, seal the cuticle, provide a ton of shine, and at the same time, it's ammonia-free. So we're not using a ton of chemicals, and we're getting really, really great results. So that's DLA. The other thing too is we did launch a brand new curl line. So one of the awesome parts with this is it's called Curl Expression, and there's 3 different styling products as well as a curl refresher. So this mannequin, she was actually just air dried, but you can see what's nice about it is this will help to reduce any kind of friction from the night before if they haven't washed their hair, any kind of frizz. And all you do is you just spray it through the hair lightly, and it's going to reactivate anything else that's happening and really just kind of tame that curl and give it some shine. So you can see again, here's our final result. When it comes to the double point, you end up with a really soft diffused kind of sun-kissed look. And then when it goes to the big paint, we end up with almost an overall lightening effect. So you can see there's still a little bit of natural so that it complements her skin tone, but we've worked the lightness up towards the top of the head, and we got a completely different result. So thank you so much for being here. And if you have any questions again, my name is Stephanie Cashmere with Loreal Professional. And thank you again. I'll see you soon, Salon Republic.